A review of making inferences. We are going to review the things that you do when you make inferences as you read. And then I will read you a new read-aloud story and have you answer questions to practice making inferences on your own. What is inferring? Inferring is reading all of the clues and making your best guess. Inferring is similar to predicting, but they are not the same, and you'll see why. When you're inferring, you are using all clues to draw conclusions about what is being read. When you infer, you may or may not know the answer to your question by the end of the story. This is where it differs from predicting. When you predict, you know if your prediction comes true or does not come true by the end of the story. However, when you infer, that may not always be the case. You may finish a story and still not be sure if your inference was true or not. When you infer, you are making a guess about what a character will do, how a character feels, and other judgments about the character or the story. When do you make inferences? As a reader, you can make inferences during reading. As a reader, you need to ask yourself questions as you read and make inferences based on what you have read. How do you go about making inferences while you're reading? Inferences are made by questioning yourself about the story while you read. Ask yourself about why a character does something, how a character feels, or other questions you come up with about the character. To make an inference during reading, you must question yourself, meaning ask yourself these questions about the character. Here are some examples of questions you can ask. What will happen next in the story, and why do I think that? What clues have led you to think that? So what information or details or events from the story made me think that? Why did that character do that? How does the character feel? And also, why did the author write this story? These are some example questions to ask yourself while you're reading, and those are making inferences as you read. I am going to read you a story about an Inuit girl in northern Canada. The girl's village is on a bay that freezes during the winter. She goes under the ice to collect mussels, which is a type of shellfish that people eat. As we read, I will stop and ask you questions that deal with making inferences. This will help you practice inferencing because you'll need to do it later in the week as you read your story. The very last first. Ava and her mother walk through the village. 100 or so one-story wooden houses are nestled together at the head of a sheltering bay. Each of them pulls behind her a small sled loaded with a shovel, a long ice chisel, and a pan for mussels. Snow lies white as far as they can see. Snow, but no trees for miles and miles on the vast northern tundra. There are no highways either. The village is off and away by itself. Snowmobile tracks leading away from it disappear into the distance. Ava and her mother cross the snow-covered beach and step out onto the thick sea ice. They've come at just the right time. The tide has pulled back from the land, and there won't be any water near the shore, so they can go under the ice and wander about on the seabed quite safely. "Goodbye," Ava's mother says. "Be careful and good luck." Ava grins. "Good luck yourself," she replies. Ava stops in what seems to be a good place where the ice is raised and swollen. We'll stop there and take a look at your first question. How does Ava seem to feel about going under the ice? And how do you know? By answering this question, you are inferring or making an inference. Perhaps you answered something like this: she's excited and happy because she grins. Using your clues from the story that she's grinning and what you already know from your life examples, hopefully you came up with a similar inference. When the hole is about 2 feet square in the ice, Ava lowers herself into the darkness and stands in the under ice cavern. She's proud and excited and alone. She had used her shovel to move some snow and then used her sharp chisel to crack the ice and make the large hole that she slipped through. It was hard because the ice had froze several months ago and was very thick. She lights a candle as she's down below in the under ice cavern and watches the yellow light soften the blackness, glistening on the ice, shining over her head and on the wet, black stones and pools and seaweed at her feet. Let's stop and look at question 2. Why do you think Ava cut a hole about 2 feet square in the ice? Maybe your inference was similar to this. She made the hole 2 feet square to make it large enough for her to get in and out of easily. Let's continue. Then for a moment she's afraid. It's too dark to see far, and she knows it can be dangerous down here. The under ice world stretches far across the bay to where the sea tide is already beginning to lap back. She'll have to be careful. If she forgets how long she's been down, the tide could catch her. If she goes too far, she could lose her way back. Ava shivers, then laughs to herself. I'd better get to work, she says. Ava carefully wedges her candle between 2 stones and starts collecting mussels. She has chosen her spot well, and her candle shows up strings of blue and black mussel shells among the stones wherever she turns. Before long, her pan is full. The tide is still quite a way out. There's plenty of time to do what she has always wanted. Time to enjoy being by herself down here in the dark, mysterious, undersea winter world. Ava sings a tune, quietly at first, then loudly, so the echoes of her singing bounce off the ice at her. She shouts to herself and is glad. She dances a little dance. She pokes in rock pools and makes strange shadows with her candle. She lifts up seaweed in long, flat, ribbon strands and lets them down with a flop. At last Ava hears a voice. Her mother is calling through the ice hole. Are you all right down there? Have you nearly finished? Ava takes her candle, goes back to the hole, and picks up her mussel pan. Of course I'm all right. I'm coming up now. She climbs out into the fresh air and feels the cold wind on her face again. You've done well, her mother says. They load up the sleds again, and Ava takes her mother's hand. Together they walk over the ice, across the beach, through the village. Already twilight has fallen. Daylight lasts only a very few hours this far north in January. Ava glances back over her shoulder at the mussel shells and thinks of popping them in boiling water, watching them open, tasting the salty fish in her mouth. That's my last, very first time, she says sadly. My very last, very first time for walking alone under the sea. Ava's mother laughs. You really like it down there, don't you? Yes, Ava answers. Yes, I do. Let's take a look at your last question. Why would Ava be sad at having completed her first trip under the ice? Hopefully your inference was similar to this. The experience will never again be as new and as exciting as it was the first time. Here's a conclusion about making inferences. Remember, inferring requires the reader to ask questions during reading. Today, I provided the questions for you. Making inferences is a way to check for understanding. If you were able to answer the inferring questions, that helped you review the story in your mind to make sure you are understanding it. Making inferences require the use of additional strategies to ensure comprehension. You also did this today. And your inference may or may not be proven during the story. Remember, you will not always know if your inference was correct or not when you finish a story. Remember these skills and check back to this lesson at any time during the week if you need to review making inferences.